So the new Hidden Realms update for Risk of Rain 2 has just recently come out, and with it a bunch of new changes, including a new survivor, Akrid, and a bunch of new hidden realms. We've also got new enemy types, new bosses, and new items. I'm going to be running through all of this in my patch rundown right now. So starting off with major content, we can see that Hopoo has finally added the dedicated server tool. Many people don't like playing quick play just because of the fact it's always hosted on your server. So whoever's hosting the game can end the game at any time by just leaving. With this new dedicated server tool, you will be able to go on dedicated servers, and if someone leaves, but you still get to keep playing. This is a new tool that they added that is still in alpha though, so it's not going to be 100% foolproof. That being said, it's really nice to know that they are going to be working on the multiplayer, which was painful in Risk of Rain 1 and so far has been kind of painful in Risk of Rain 2. Moving on, we have a new survivor, Akrid. If you haven't seen it yet, my new video on how to get Akrid is in the top right. Basically, how this new survivor plays is he's a poison melee/ranged hybrid. Most of his attacks do damage to enemies over time, dealing about 10% of their max health per second. Personally, I don't believe he's very strong, but regardless, he's super cute. I mean, just look at this spawn animation. Ah! Anyway, next up we have the stage variants. Now, these stage variants aren't actually different maps. They're the same maps, but they just have different layouts. So far, they are only going to be affecting the first stage, so Titanic Plains and Distant Roost. This is just to keep the game fresh. There's still going to be spawns for everything. Everything is just going to be the exact same. It's just basically a new map they added. I really like it. It looks really cool and keeps the game kind of fresh. Hopefully they do more of this in the future. Alright, speaking of adding new stages, they have two more hidden realms. The first one is called the Void Fields, and the second one is called the Secret Hidden Realm. Now, the Void Fields is in the Bazaar Between Worlds, and you can see how to get there in my How to Unlock Akrid video, but basically it just serves as a new area that you can get through the Bazaar Between Worlds. I don't know if there's any other way to get there right now. This is kind of a challenge world, just like Aurelia Night, where you have to finish whatever you're doing in there. So in this case, you have to do all the null cells before you can leave and move on with your run. Now, the new Secret Hidden Realm that is super secret is apparently attached to an item. So you can only get to the Secret Hidden Realm if you go through the Celestial Portal with a Beads of Fealty lunar item. I'll be telling you a little bit more about the Beads of Fealty in the future, but essentially this is the Celestial Portal, but it will help you farm lunar coins even faster. I made a lunar coin farming video not too long ago, but this apparently will double or maybe even triple your overall lunar coin yield when sacrificing yourself at the obelisk. Apparently you have to fight a boss to get more. I haven't really tried it out yet. I've been looking at other things, but from what I've heard, this is how you get more lunar coins. Anyway, now we are moving on. We have new skill variants for 3 survivors. We have Rex utility, Loader utility, and Akrid utility. Now, full disclosure, I have not unlocked Rex or Loader's utility skill, so I can't really speak to how good they are, but the wiki is thankfully updated to include the new abilities, so we can actually see what they are. So for Rex's utility skill, we have a new skill called Bramble Volley. It has a 2-second cooldown, costs 20% of your current health, and fires thorns that pushes and damages all enemies hit for 550% damage. It also does the same thing that the Disperse does, his initial utility skill, which pushes you backwards if you are airborne. Also, it heals for every target hit, so basically a common Rex ability. Again, I can't speak to this overall usefulness as I have not unlocked it yet, but from what I've seen, if you want to get this, you have to get the other M2 that he recently just got, which doesn't cost his health. Although I'm not sure, so we'll be looking at this in the future. Anyway, moving on to Loader. Loader's new utility skill is called the Thunder Gauntlet. It charges up, it's the same thing as the Charge Gauntlet, but it does a little bit less damage and shocks all enemies for 1,000 damage. And just like the Charge Gauntlet, it deals more damage the faster you are moving. So the Thunder Gauntlet is going to be used for more AoE situations. The Charge Gauntlet, you had to aim at people, so if you were trying to punch large groups of enemies, you would have to aim it specifically to hit all of them as you punch. This one seems to be that you can hit just one enemy and it will hit all of them around you. It's not a ukulele, but it will hit in a cone. Most likely an upgrade, because what I see is that it only does 2100% damage, which means that it shouldn't charge, but it does say charge up, so I'm not sure if it has the same charge up for a massive punch for 600 to 2700, meaning I don't know if there's a lower end of the damage, but if there's not, then this is definitely an upgrade. Alright, so now we have the Akrid utility. This new utility skill, or alternate utility skill for Akrid, is called Frenzied Leap. You leap into the air, dealing 550% damage and stunning enemies on impact. This reduces the cooldown every time you hit someone. The notable difference between the Frenzied Leap and the Caustic Leap is that the Frenzied Leap, the alternate utility skill that you have to unlock, does not poison enemies. That being said, the Frenzied Leap does way more damage and actually has a larger AoE. They both have 2 charges, they both stun enemies on impact. The only difference is whether or not you want to do large amounts of AoE damage or you want to do poison damage. It's really up to you. So that's all of the new skill variants. You also have a new skin for Akrid. This is going to be the Obliterate Yourself at a Celestial Portal. You also have a new monster called the Void Reaver. This thing only appears later on in your stages. I have not seen one pre-stage 7, I think. Stage 6 or 7 is when I first saw one of these. They are incredibly deadly. Like, they do AoE purple balls stuff. I don't know exactly what to call it. But when they die, this is important. When they die, they will explode in like a small AoE and there'll be a little like circle you can get into. Do not get into that circle. You will instantly die. It doesn't matter how much health you have. One-shot protection will not protect you. If you get inside of that, you will die. It's honestly crazy, and I'm assuming that you're not going to be able to see too many of these because that's extremely powerful to just die if you're too close to them. Alright, so the new boss is going to be the Scavenger. The Scavenger is broken in a way. I have not exactly fought him yet, but I have heard that he is the new allied warship unit. The allied warship unit kind of got neutered this patch, so they had to add something that really challenges the survivor. So the Scavenger actually has equipment. So he can have gnarled wood sprites, he can have a heroic capacitor, he can have a Praeon, yada yada yada. And as the fight goes on, he gets harder and harder to kill. Some people have complained that they have not been able to kill him because they just didn't do enough damage. Having a gnarled wood sprite means 1.5% of their max health per second. And bosses have lots of health, so that's lots of health regen. If you ever come across this guy, pray to whatever god you believe in. And the new secret boss is the Celestial Portal boss. Once you go into the Celestial Portal with your new beads of fealty, you will have to fight this boss, and upon killing this boss, it will act as if though you have obliterated yourself. You will get more lunar coins, but you will end the run. That's it. And now we have the items. So we have 10 new items in the game. 9 are just regular items that you can pick up and stack, and 1 is an equipment. The first is Razor Wire, and this just makes it so every time that you take damage, you will retaliate and do damage to the enemy. The next one is Fresh Meat, and Fresh Meat gives you health regen once you kill something. Gore's Tome gives enemies a chance to drop gold when they die. It's kind of like a bandolier, except it gives you gold instead, and this is a very large amount of gold. It's basically a free chest. The Resonance Disc is a legendary item, and I've seen this thing. It does a lot of damage. I have not actually played with it, I just see people play with it, and from what I've seen, it does a decent amount of damage, but I can't say for myself. From what I've seen and heard, it kind of acts like a Nehukana's, but instead of doing it based off of your healing, it does based off of how much you have killed. So every time you kill an enemy, it stores charges, and then eventually once you have enough charges, it will release and do damage based off of that. The Jade Elephant is the new equipment, and this thing is pretty good. All it does is it says it gives you a massive amount of armor. I'm not sure how much a massive amount of armor is, but I know it's at least over 200. I think it might give you 80 to almost 90% armor reduction, or damage reduction, not armor reduction. So I'm not exactly sure how much that is. That's going to be a lot of armor, but once you pop this thing, you are next to not dying. So really good item, really good equipment slot, especially for tankier survivors. The Visions of Heresy is a needle gun M1. So the Strides of Heresy replace your utility skill. The Visions of Heresy will replace your M1. This is pretty good on bad M1 characters. I think the Huntress would take this. I think But seriously, all it does is that it's kind of like a needle gun from Halo. You shoot it at an enemy, and then once the needles are on it, it'll do damage. Then it'll explode and do more damage. So it's pretty good. A little aside that I just realized as I was recording content for this video, the Visions of Heresy, the M1 replacing ability, it actually works on your turrets as well if you're the engineer. So this is actually a pretty big buff. I can explain this in a little bit more detail some other time, but essentially your turrets do more damage than you, so when you give them 120% of their damage, they're actually going to be doing more damage. So that means that this is a big buff for the turrets if they work in the way that I think, which is using their base damage and then taking that 120%. So big buff, big strides of heresy. Always get this on the engineer. It's huge. The beads of fealty are a lunar item that do nothing. They seriously do nothing but allow you to face the celestial portal boss, the new hidden boss, and get to the new hidden realm. Having these in your inventory will take you to that boss fight and allow you to get more lunar coins from the celestial portal. It will end your run, however, and this is really all they do. Essentially, picking these up mean you are gambling to get to the celestial portal and hoping that you can defeat it. Otherwise, it's just a waste of your lunar coins. The Genesis Loop is a new boss item, and this thing is awesome. It comes from the Wandering Vagrant, and once you get to a low enough health, you will do a Vagrant Explosion. This Vagrant Explosion absolutely wrecks. It does almost as much damage, maybe even the same amount of damage as a Vagrant Explosion does. I had this on my turrets as an engineer, and they would wipe the map every time they got low. It was absolutely insane. As for the next two boss items, I'm not entirely sure what they are. I haven't seen them drop yet, so I can't speak to what they are. And I've checked the wiki. The wiki does not seem to have information either, so kind of have to leave you in the dark here until I see what these drop from. Alright, so the new chest that they added is the adaptive chest. This thing will put items in the center and will continually swap through other items, going faster and faster as it goes along. You can choose which item you get, but you have to have pretty quick fingers to be able to choose what you want. These things are really nice when you get the item you want, but sometimes it feels pretty bad when you miss it and accidentally get like a rusted key. The Overgrown 3D printer is just a boss item printer, so any boss item you can trade it in now. That's pretty good. The cleansing pool is actually super good. So previously there was no way to get rid of your lunar items. So if you had like a Transcendence, a Corpse Bloom, whatever, maybe you accidentally picked up an item, maybe you wanted that item, but now you're getting better items and you can't use them. So for example, a Transcendence, maybe you had that, but now you're getting a bunch of Lifesteal items and you're like, oh crap, I'm wasting all of these items. Well, the cleansing pool, you can actually put lunar items in it and get rid of them. It costs 1 lunar coin per item, I believe, but you get rid of that lunar item, which is pretty nice. And there's a new drone that came out as well. It's called the emergency drone. Not entirely sure what this is. I honestly didn't even notice that there was a new drone in the game until I read this, so no clue. Probably like a healing drone. Maybe it saves you. I don't know. So for the new added 3 challenges in the game, there is To Be Left Alone, which is the Akrid challenge. That's how you unlock Akrid. The new class challenge for Rex is Dunked, and for this you have to throw a Clay Templar into a pit on the abandoned aqueduct. As for the loader, we have Earthshatter, which is as loader, land a charged gauntlet hit at 300 mph or higher. And then we have a new environment logs, we have lore entries. That's nice and all, but I mean, you guys can figure that out for yourself. Alright, moving on. We have gameplay changes. Regens are not multipliers, but scaling bonuses. So what all of this nonsense means is that your bonuses you get from the regen items will all be basically the same on every single survivor. Basically, regen items were more valuable on other survivors, like for example, melee survivors, but now they're just as valuable on everyone. The big update here is that Aurelian Knight and Ally Worship Unit have their scaling decreased massively. So their health has been decreased by 20%, but their damage has been decreased by 75%, which is huge. You can go fight the Allied Worship Unit now, and it is far more comparable to getting the legendary chest on Abyssal Depths. So now you can actually go to the Siren's Call, and it's not the worst map in the game. Time to get some payback, allied warship unit. And a very large change here is changing one-shot protection to not include barrier. Well, technically it does include barrier, but what this really means is that it doesn't include barrier. So previously, barrier had its own one-shot protection in. So if you had 100% health and 100% barrier, if you got hit, you would go to 10% of your barrier, but you'd still be at 100% of your health. Now you can be at 100% health and 100% barrier, and if you get hit and take a lot of damage, it will take you to 10% of your total health. So basically, it just ignores barrier. One-shot protection is still the exact same, but now your barrier just does not matter. And we've got a couple of buffs for the Survivor. The scrap launcher is better. The cooldown is far less, halved actually. The animation is better. The grenade speed is quicker. The Rex Smoothie skin is fall colors and unique textures. He looks pretty cool now, so go get your mastery skin for him. His M1 has been incredibly buffed. The burst duration is shorter. The animation duration is quicker. The heal percentage is doubled. This makes Rex incredibly more viable as he can directly control his health even more. Alright, so Seed Volley got changed. It is now Directive Drill. The HP cost has been removed and the visuals and icons make it less flowery, yada yada yada. But basically what this really means is that Seed Volley is technically better now. Previously, I think it was just like a weird upgrade to his initial M2, so it would do more damage, but it would cost more health. Now it's completely different. It still does like 450% damage, but now it doesn't cost your health. And it's not spammable either. It's a 3-second cooldown, so it's a little bit different than your M2. Remember how I was talking about his utility skill earlier? Well, if you get that new utility skill, you might want to use this one instead. So you're going to be using this one that doesn't do damage to yourself. That way you can use the utility skill, which does do damage to yourself. Just my opinion, but this is a huge buff for Rex. Loader Knuckle Boom has a small forward lunge and extends the size of Hurt Box, which I'm pretty sure just means your punch. And Grapple/Spike Fist got a minor buff. It's kind of a quality of life buff, so your tether won't break when you get really close to something. That's extremely good. Going down the items now, Predatory Instincts got a buff to its duration. Happiest Mask got a proc chance decrease, but a ghost damage increase by a lot. The Eccentric Vase is still the worst item in the game, but a little bit better now, as it doesn't have a 100-second cooldown and it's a little bit quicker. The Personal Shield Generator got better for Transcendence, which is good, so this is an overall buff, but worse for one-shot protection. So it's 8% of your maximum health instead of just 25. That's good for Transcendence buffs, because once you get Transcendence, the Personal Shield Generator should be getting about 16% of your max health, I think, if it doubles your health. I'm not entirely certain about this, though. Shaped Glass, you get a new special death message for dying while carrying Shaped Glass. I've seen it before. It really does make fun of you for stacking it. Brainstalk's got a big buff to it, and the camera effect is there so that you can actually tell that you have Brainstalks. It's really hard to tell before this. When you had Brainstalks, you just accidentally be casting your spells a lot and you'd be like, oh, Brainstalks is up. Now you definitely know. Apparently there's a glow of red around your screen. It's really cool. The Queen's Gland, all possible guards are spawned at once when stacked, which is okay. That's still a bad item, but the backup increases the size of backup drones, which is weird. I don't know what that is for. So for everyone who thinks that this is a buff for the Frost Relic, this is not a buff for the Frost Relic. It still does the exact same damage, but it actually visualizes where the damage is. So previously, you'd think, oh, it's only going to hit around me because that's where the visual is, but now they added the visual to around you so you know that it actually does damage in a sphere. A lot of people were confused about this. This isn't a buff. It works the exact same. It's just more visually appealing and actually shows you where the damage comes from. So the Red Whip, getting hurt no longer disables the buff. This just means when you take fall damage. If you are in combat, which means you get hit by other things, you're still, disabling the buff. It updated the whip model and texture and icon. It really looks pretty sleek, so, pick it up just for the cool little whip. The Brittle Crown got a little bit of a buff. It removed the flat gold reduction on Brittle Crown. I don't really think this is still viable, but hey. The War Banner will no longer show up in damage chests, which is uber nice. The rusted key, the lockbox size has been increased by 50% and is slightly shinier, so you're not going to have to put on your glasses to see this thing. Alright, so now we're on the stages. The Abandoned Aqueduct. The reduced spawn cost of Clay Templars to match other maps with Clay Templars. Essentially, this means that you will be seeing more Clay Templars on the Abandoned Aqueduct. This is pretty bad for you. Scorch Acres adds ally vultures to the spawn list, which is pretty nice, but it only adds it after the first loop, and reduces the spawn distance of an Imp Overlord. Imp Overlords are notorious for never wanting to spawn inside the circle when you pop the teleporter. This will fix that a little bit. Bazaar Between Time just got a visual buff. Rally Point Delta doubles the frequency of drones spawning in the map and reduces spawn distance of Overlord and Magma Worms, so they won't spawn outside of the teleporter like I just said on Scorched Acres. Monsters adds Grove Tender to Wisp family event. So when it says the air is burning and they're only wisp spawning, the Grove Tender will now spawn. So you might have a Grove Tender as the boss when you pop it instead of just greater wisps. The wisp have recently, this is a nerf to wisp, so their spawn cost has increased, which means you will see less of them. And their base damage has been decreased as well by 0.5, but that's still massive because they do 3 shots. So that's an overall 1.5 damage reduction. Elites have received some changes, not very much. The Malachite add a visual effect and overlay when affected by Malachite debuff. This just means you'll be able to tell when you actually have that negative debuff on you, which is great because sometimes, you just don't know. Alright, so drones are resistant to AoE attacks, reducing incoming damage by 70%. I'm assuming this makes it a little bit more in line. Vagrants won't wipe all of your drones now. I'm assuming that's what the buff was. And purchase gunners now persist between stages. I think this means that when you go to that stage again, you'll still have the gunner turret, but it could mean that gunner turrets follow you, but that would be weird. I don't know if that's how it works, but I think that they're persistent when you go to that stage. So if you unlocked it on stage 1 and you go to the loop again and you're on stage 5, which means you're on stage 1 again, your gunner turret will still be there. That's a nice little quality of life buff. It really doesn't do too much, but now you don't have to purchase more and more gunner turrets. So here's a huge quality of life update. So you can no longer have golems from being chosen as a teleporter boss. That's nice, I guess. Doesn't really affect me too much. I never saw them in the first place. The teleporter boss will initially target the player who activated it. That's pretty good when you're playing with friends, or if you're like an engineer, or maybe you have turrets, yada yada yada. It's always going to attack you first. You've got a "Are you sure you want to quit?" That's nice. Add selected difficulty to the stat sheet at the end of the run. Ha! No more screenshots showing me your 400-minute runs without me knowing you're on Drizzle. Yeah, I know you. I know who you are. Multi-shop terminals can no longer all have question marks. This is pretty big, and this makes RNG a little bit less. Bypass ping cooldown for single-player games. Nice. This adds execution damage to total damage stats, so you can pump up those numbers. They also added the visuals for the 3D printer, so there's actually like a little bit of a background to it, so you can more clearly see what you're putting in the printer, so you don't have to go, wait, what did I just lose? The loader's pylon now triggers pressure plates, so not only can the engineer get into the Abandoned Aqueduct Kajaro's band area, but the loader seems to be able to do that solo now. As long as you can find both, he runs to one, puts his shock thing down, and then runs to the other, opens it up, and he's in. And force loadout button to always be visible even if you have no skills unlocked. This is really good for newer players. When I first started playing, I had no idea there were loadouts. I saw my friends using different abilities, and I was like, what? How? But now everyone knows that there are different abilities you can use even if you don't have anything unlocked. And that's it for the Hidden Realms update patch rundown. I'm going to be trying out a bunch of new things. I'm going to be playing a bunch of Akrid, so there's going to be lots of content coming in the future. Just make sure to check that out. If you like this video, give it a like, comment if you want to give feedback or something like that, and sub if you want. Anyway, have a good day and enjoy Hidden Realms.